there was a lot of positive feedback because people welcomed her and the young people. And we're grooming. That's the whole thing. We have to figure out what does this look like the next 10 years down the line. And so we have that plan in place for radio talk show hosts. So I'm excited, like I said, and thank you all again for committing to being a part of Teacher Talk for the union. It's going to be a very interesting year. It's already been an interesting year before we started, and as we look forward to what's to come. So, as we said, this is the Founders Week episode, and usually during Founders Day, we reflect on our year as a union, and more so on the historical element, because it is usually a time that we celebrate, what we've done as the first trade union in Bermuda, celebrating 102 years.
And the work continues. The work is ongoing.
The work is definitely ongoing. So I think it's important that we take time to reflect. We always honor our founders as well. I think people should know those names. We've done a good job over the last 2 years when we celebrate our centenary, honoring the names of Reverend Rufus Stovall, Sister Adele Tucker, and Sisters Edith and Matilda Crawford for doing what they did on February 1st,
1919. Yes.
Which was the establishment of the BUT. Yeah. So let's talk about this year in review.
Ooh,
so February 2020. And the thing is, initially when we thought about it, it was wonderful because we went straight to COVID, right? Because COVID happened
in March. Yes.
But February was hot for the union because how many sit-ins did we have?
And let us all, I have to always put this in there. Let us all remember that in February, you were actually still on maternity leave.
Yes.
You became a first-time mom in December of 2019. And yes, you were on maternity leave, and our VP at the time was Brother Anthony Wolf. He was acting up as the president, but it was still a lot, and you kept your finger on the pulse as...
Yes, you did.
Being on the pulse, baby in the arms. Between Brother Wolf, Brother Cooper, and Brother Charles. I mean, we were on it, so we was... But the thing is, so when things happened, I remember receiving that phone call, and I want to say maybe Delwood was the first school.
Okay.
Delwood had set in. Okay, what's good? That's my school.
That's your school.
Roaring Lions. Shout out to the Delwood family. Delwood set in, and then after that, you heard it was Elliott. Then it was Victor Scott, Northlands. All in February. It was almost like it was city and city. What was deemed, and I'm using my terms very carefully here, what was deemed as irregular industrial action, because we didn't actually agree with that, because a lot of the stuff that the schools were actually sitting out on was just basic rights, like it's certain things that just should happen or should not happen.
And that was my concern. It's so unfortunate that at times we feel the need to take forms of action for basic rights, basic timelines of expectations for things to be rectified or fixed or put into place. It's so unfortunate that we have to take these actions and then in turn be penalized for it.
Well, this is it. Exactly.
And well, it's been historic that as teachers take action, there's something wrong with us. And sometimes what I would like the public to just understand is that, sometimes we have to stop for a minute. We always take care of the children. That is that's what we do. That is our mandate. We're going to take care of the children. But when you see us stepping out for a minute, you have got to understand that it has gone beyond limits now. We need help. So we have to pause.
And also, it's not like it's just this instant action that has actually taken place. The advocacy and the request for what it is that we need, that's always ongoing. And many times we don't do as good of a job as we can do to really promote what it is that we're fighting for. So it wasn't that, these schools just kind of decided to sit out. They have, I want to say right up from Victor Scott, they were pushing for support as early as September. Yes. And I mean, you have the data and the documentation to support
everything. Email trails of emails.
This is it. And then it's almost like it's the straw that broke the camel's back. Correct. And that's the only thing that the public sees. The straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yes, they don't see the build up, the lead up to it. Yeah. And you have to understand that even within our schedules for the day teaching, where do we have time to sit down and talk about anything? It's got to be our lunch hour, and it's got to be that quick because we have to eat, we have to go and do lunch duty, we have to make sure we're ready for our classes when they come back in, and we have to have time to talk.
This is it. Mm-hmm.
So people just need to understand within our workday, it is really very difficult for us to even really get together to talk about what's happening, in our business. Yeah.
This is it. And let's just be very clear as well, because what we've negotiated for in our CBA, many of those things when we look at planning and preparation, that stuff was advocated for way back then. But when we look at the demands and the expectations on teachers today, the two do not marry as it pertains to the time that we're given. So,
and with the, innovation of the cell phone now and WhatsApp, it's almost like people feel like it's okay for you to just, I'm going to send our message at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. We have to go to sleep and we have families.
Mm-hmm. And we tell our members, 3:30 you knock off. If it's a weekend, you do not have to respond. If it's a holiday, you do not have to respond. We forget sometimes that that's our sacred time, and we have personal lives as well, because many times teachers begin to feel so overwhelmed about those late night messages or weekend messages or stuff that happens or expectations on vacation or holiday. You don't need to clock in unless it's the work day, 8:30 to 3:30, Monday to Friday, and that's our stance, bottom line.
Right.
So, but yeah, February was a hot month sit in city. I remember actually, even though I was on maternity leave, I showed up at some of those meetings with Chana in her pumpkin seat. Because it's hard when you have the passion about the union, and I think that's what we all have. We want to be a part of these solutions. We want to support, and so we do what we need to do.
Yes, show up.
Because our advocacy isn't from 8:30 to 3:30, Monday to Friday. We show up whenever we need to show up.
Yes.
And
so, Madam President, I know it's a whole year later, but ultimately, have all of those issues been fully resolved? Do we know where we are with any of the issues?
Most of them, they have been addressed in certain terms. And we could talk about that a little bit later, because COVID actually happened. And so it changed a lot of things. So let's talk about COVID, but we'll do that when we come right back. You have been tuned in to Teacher Talk, this year's anniversary celebration, where we are focusing on our union year in review. Don't change that dial. We'll be right back.
The Bermuda Union of Teachers presents the new Teacher Talk on Magic 102.7. First Thursdays, President Mashanti Bailey keeps us up to date with union biz. Second Thursdays, Sister Laurel Burns gives teacher kudos in Teacher Spotlight. Third Thursdays, Teacher Reps Patricia Nisbet and Gina Davis host Take It Back Thursday, honoring our retired teachers. And fourth Thursdays, Noir Youth Theater Company highlights youth in the arts with Company Director Patricia Nisbet. Tune in every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on Magic 102.7 to hear what's new on Teacher Talk.
Teacher Talk.
I just want to say that we need to start supporting our public school teachers.
It's time for Teacher Talk.
Education is the most powerful weapon to change the world.
It's time for Teacher Talk.
Welcome back to Teacher Talk Founders Day Special Edition. And we are having conversation or transitioning into COVID-19.
Oh,
right.
I felt like the word should be catapulted.
But that is true, right?
Yes.
Because
it was overnight.
Literally in a blink of an eye.
You go in, this is what you have to do, session done.
Right. But you know what I'm proud of within the system? I can say, and I don't know what's happening at other schools, but I can say at Cedar Bridge, for example, a while ago, it was...
I think it's about 2015. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, we have been asked to explore Google Educator. Yes. And then it becomes, listen, why don't you get your certification for Google Educator? So we have been set up for at such a time as this. Yeah. And then there was Schoology. You started to use Schoology. What were some of the other pieces that...
G Suite was part of Google. I know for me, when you say COVID happened, the first two things that come to my mind is Mad Dash and scramble. That's how I felt as a system. Now, you, Gina and Pat, you guys work at Cedar Bridge, and you just said you guys were kind of set up for some things. Imagine the role that I'm in as a mentor teacher at the time, fully supporting teachers across the system. And when we talk about myself and my team, we literally mentor teachers from preschool straight through high school. So that mad dash and scramble look differently because we're supporting people with different contexts, different resources. And so you guys were kind of set up. We had an opportunity to get Google certified. So I had gotten my level 1 certification. But then what about my preschool teachers who had nothing, or their device wasn't working, or my primary school teachers who didn't have laptops, or the personal ones couldn't connect properly? And then what platform? Because Schoology, that was late in the game. Like Schoology was a result of COVID. Oh shucks, we probably need to buy something. So that actually doesn't count. So the scramble for my primary school teacher, it was a mad dash and a scramble. I could go on, but
it highlights one main thing: the differences in readiness at each level. So high schools, for the most part, you were able to transition, sort of, kind of, but you had some sort of foundation. But everyone else was like, oh my goodness. And I know that's one thing that we've always had to say, have at the forefront. You can't put a one-size-fit plan for everyone because everyone's access to resources, understanding, training as well. It's different across the board.
And I think a lot of, and I'm not speaking for every single teacher, but I know part of the issue also becomes trying to teach online that looks very different from teaching in a classroom. It's very, very different. The resource, the instructional strategist, some people can transfer that information and some people cannot. Some things are transferable, things are transferable, and some things are not. And even like when I look at my role, and similar to yours as a mentor, you literally have to learn how to do something to teach somebody who has to teach somebody while they are learning.
So imagine the dual scramble that I went through, and even you, Gina, that both of us as professional developers, there's a mad scramble to see what teachers have and can you even get on, and then you and I are scrambling to say, how do we learn, and then how do we, and then teach someone else how to do it,
and then check to make sure that they're teaching,
and then turn around and check to make sure, and can I hop into your classroom, but I'm still trying to learn this other app so that I can show you how to use the app. Listen,
and so bottom line, imagine how the teacher felt.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, you still have all the expectations, and this is coming down the pipeline. You still have to do this, attendance and lesson plans and this, that. Make sure you listen.
And then what about the pumpkins?
But then the children,
didn't have devices.
My God.
I wasn't even thinking about children that didn't have Wi-Fi in their homes. You know, how are we going to do this? And then the remote packages came, and I was like, and I think how are we getting them out, and how are we getting them back in, and how are we doing this for grading, and how are we doing this, you know?
And it goes back to what you said with how do you offer a wholesale package for every child when nothing is the same anywhere. And I think as educators, one of the things that we try to do anyway as educators is adjust what we do and how we work with children independently. So with going into COVID, Pat needs a computer, Nashanti needs Wi-Fi, Laurel needs a place to sleep, Gina needs food, everybody needs something different. And all of that showed up in COVID.
Immediately.
And ultimately, though, because we ventured into the unknown, and it wasn't just in education, the world, we had to adjust and we ventured into the unknown. But there was something beautiful that came out of this mad dash unknown, this scramble, don't know what to do. But teachers did what they always do. They showed up and they made it happen. And there was this downpouring of love, appreciation for what we do as professionals. Because
sharing of information.
Most definitely.
Was amazing.
It was amazing. And parents got to sit in our shoes, having to only manage their 1, 2, or 3 children and say, and listen, it's 3:30 here yet, because, of the demand that they saw that it took. And that was one of the biggest things for me in that mad dash, and within that first month or even first couple of weeks, there was this turn of appreciation for educators and what it is that we do. So that was really glory laying
Can we
for
talk
us.
about parents for a minute?
Sure.
Certainly parents, they're adults, they're humans like all of us. And like you said, COVID struck the world, and really the cross section of parents that teachers and admins had to, collaborate with brought its own dynamic, and some of those collaborations were extremely successful and extremely supportive, and teachers and administrators were showing up. And then there were some parents where they were challenged too, and they're human, and their level of stress and frustration around possibly not having a job anymore, or just basic coping skills about the unknown. And unfortunately some had to shut down, which means the children were shut down. And so as admins and teachers were showing up from another place of, listen, how can I help you get a grocery voucher? Or how can I,
oh my goodness, yes.
How can I support? Listen, I'm going to take this off your plate. And if you just let Johnny call me for 15 minutes, I'll help him get through that. Yeah. Teachers showed up from a social emotional perspective in support of parents, all the while as teachers were being humans themselves.
And trying to
Our
deal with
teachers
social emotional issues.
And doing their own social emotional issues. And then can we talk about teachers as parents? I think what broke my heart was when I heard of a colleague say, I can't put my daughter onto her teacher's class because I don't have time. I have to teach my own class. Right. And that broke my heart because of the expectations and demands and somewhat of that one size fits all, man. I'm trying to keep my job and stay in good graces, so I can't see to it. And there was something very wrong with that. Yeah. And most of us functioned on grace. That word grace flew around a lot in my circles. Yeah. Most of us functioned on grace. Unfortunately, nothing's 100%. And that's one story that broke my heart.
Most definitely, and that's from a union standpoint. That's one thing that we've always had to drive home, because equity and access to whatever it is that we need was not the same across the board. So there had to be a lot of flexibility that was given on teachers, whether it was lack of resources, teachers as parents, because at the end of the day, I have to teach my classes from this time to this time, but also my child has to be on. And so that's something that we really had to drive home. And we encouraged members, to speak up at the end of the day, because in some schools, depending on where you're at, and let's be very real and honest about it, not everyone has the confidence to be able to just speak up and let your principal know, this is my situation. And as a union, we were expecting that there would be some levels of understanding, but getting members to speak up rather than being so flustered and struggling to meet every single expectation as teacher, as parent, and the like. So that's one thing that, we really were pushing for.
I think for me, I struggled with having to be the teacher, the grandparent who is raising her granddaughter. My husband's now retired, and so he's home. And so there are things like breakfast that have to be prepared. Like, before I can cook the breakfast, run out the door, we worry about the dishes later, but they just can't pile up now. And this is just me talking as a household person, right?
Yeah.
I'm the type of person, I can't work if my space is not totally tidy. Like, I really, really can't work, right? And so, we have breakfast, then she's going into her bedroom because she has her devices, thank God for that, where she can actually manage herself. But then my husband's got meetings that's outside, and he's got to be on the computer. If my computer doesn't work, I can't use his. Like, there was stuff that I was going through, and I'm going, okay, I just want the department to understand that we're not at business as usual. This is not business as usual. So I had to kind of shut down some things and say, Patricia, this is how you're going to work. We're going to do breakfast, and everybody's going to be sound. My family is going to be sound. It's going to be God and me, my family, and then let me just worry about everybody else after. Because if I can't function, it's not going to work. And also making sure that I got that walk, like go outside and get my vitamin D and take that walk. I'm trying to make sure that I'm eating properly. And there was so much going on. And then I have classes where you have the special pumpkins who need you, functional skills, functional academics. And, I have to thank my parents. For them, I had two parents in particular that will come on because the child can't read. but they have to do this drama exercise, this theater exercise, and that's a whole nother can of worms. You try teaching acting online. And the ones that actually, they don't write very well, and they know they have this written assignment to do because the department requires you to have a written product performance. And so you have to kind of work through that. And I was constantly thinking, I'm saying, Lord Jesus, tell me, what are people around the world doing? So once school shut down, I'm going online and saying, so what are other acting teachers around the world doing? And I know that's for everybody. Science. I found out just last week, that some formulas for mathematics, they can't go on some document. Were you in on that conversation?
Well, basically what it is a lot of the mathematical symbols do not exist on keyboards.
Okay.
Right.
So you can't type certain things into documents.
So the math teachers were teaching something that the children couldn't put into a document.
That they couldn't get
so what do you
back.
do? So how to get them to write it? And they take a picture.
It's a lot of different ways in which you could do that.
Yeah. But just being able to have your own life.
Yeah.
And we went past 3:30. I mean, I can tell you, I had people calling me up till 9 o'clock at night trying to make sure that this work gets done.
But Pat, you raised one another aspect of this impact of COVID on us as educators is there are certain subject areas. Exactly how do you do that online in front of children? So we talk about theater or the art teachers or design and tech teachers, and even the sciences, chemistry, and the labs. That whole adjustment and an assumption again that everybody has everything in their household to possibly even do an adaptation of a science experiment where they don't necessarily have all of those resources. So the level of shifting and changing and trying to figure it out for your subject area, also.
It's a lot. And I want to just bring it back because at the end of the day, teachers figured it out and they did it, right?
I was going to say,
so they would go ahead.
I was going to say, what I found also, there was some teachers who literally went and did research and they tried a host of different things. I mean, there were people that, even though I'm doing staff development, I'm calling on people, how did you do that? And how did you get that done? Because that's something that can be shared with other teachers. So there were particularly, I would say, teachers like in the 30s and the 40s that are still young enough to keep up with the technology. Because it does move so fast. Now, and one of the things that I wanted to say in reference to the impact of COVID is it changed your perspective of what was important.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like sometimes I struggle with that. And my basic struggle was, in all honesty, why do I have to go to work dressed in a suit? How come I just can't wear jeans and a t-shirt? I mean, because in other words, it's like we're literally spending a lot of money on clothes that are really not necessary. Because you're going to do your job and you're going to do your job well regardless of how you look. But that's just me. Right. I mean,
but the job was still happening online, wasn't it?
And I also taught. I volunteered to help a class. So I had, a group of students that I worked with. So again, still I had to learn how to do certain things. And then I'm working with a group of children that if I had to go back and teach, that's the group of children I would teach again because it was
you touched on an important thing there. You volunteered to do something. I think that's another element. Teachers were going beyond the call of duty to make this thing work for our students while we were going through this transition of how COVID affected life. And I have to bring in the union relations piece in here because this was a very important moment for the union as well, because in the middle of teachers doing what they needed to do, figuring it out, volunteering, going over and beyond, we got smacked with those letters to those 4 schools who we talked about earlier,
I remember that.
were deemed to have taken or the irregular industrial action. So in the middle of us trying to figure this all out, they received those letters of payment deductions. You've done a great job. This is awesome how you come together, but remember what you did back in February? We're going to take that money from you because you took part in irregular industrial actions. I don't know about the rest of you lot, but my horns, the steam that came out of my head.
And Madam President, you work at Dunwood. I don't work at any of those schools. But I'm telling you, when I saw that letter and read it, the smack in my face that I felt, I felt it just now when you brought it up. That is the biggest smack in the face.
Goosebumps again, and I'm here saying, we're in a pandemic and there's no level of forgiveness if you deemed as though what we did was wrong, because at the end of the day, if we go back to the root of the issues, the sit-in should not have even taken place, because those were basic things that should already have been in place for our students and for our public schools. So when that letter happened, I started typing that letter, and I don't know if you all remember, but the letter that I wrote actually got leaked out and that went viral, but it caused a stir because it makes me be reflective of just union representation and how we represent members. Every decision that we make, everything that we do, we aren't going to have the support of everyone. You know, we represent over 900 members. So there were a lot of members who said, all right, that's right, Madam President, because my take was, if you're going to deduct from teachers who are paying out of their pocket for supplies, access to Zoom, access to resources and all of that. They're paying out of their pocket, but you want to take out of their pocket. They're receiving public plays right now, but you want to dampen that. So my call was to the membership, listen, this is what's happening with these 4 schools that are affected. So how many of you all have been given resources to do what it is that you're doing right now? How many of you all were given a stipend to say, here's for your Zoom account for you to teach lessons? That never happened. So I just simply said, work with the resources that you have been provided. I didn't say stop working. I said work with the resources that you have been provided. And some members were actually upset with that because, you know, we're always compassionate. We do our job with passion, and we always ultimately think about our students. But sometimes the advocacy that we do today, it benefits the children of tomorrow. And when we look at what our 4 founders did, they had to sacrifice a lot back then.
That's right.
Even if it was at the cost of the students learning at that point in time. But look where we are today. So I remember I got smacked on my knuckles, you know.
In all honesty, if anybody decided to work with the resources that they currently have, without putting in their own bit, how much teaching do you think will really get done?
And this is it. And that was just the statement. And it was effective in that the statement was made, because I think every teacher knew that if we did work with the resources that we have been given, there wouldn't be much happening. And especially with us being remote. So it's definitely a different perspective to take on.
Now, and I know with working remote learning and everything, Patricia always brings up, well, if we're doing this remote learning, we need to be trained to be remote teachers. Like that training needs to exist. So it led me to go and start searching and looking like, does it exist? Is there anything or anybody out there that actually teaches you and certifies you to be a remote teacher in certain content area? I think
I'll tell you why that became very important too.
I only found one.
People don't think about what else do we do. Well, there are teachers that come home and they have to do their certification here. So I have a student teacher. In the arts, technical theater, let's just figure out how we're going to learn lighting and sound and all of that while you're home, right? And unfortunately for her school, she cannot teach online because there's nothing in place for her to be certified teaching online. And so I'm saying, okay, so now we have to have the remote learning, because every teacher coming into the system now needs to have that under their belt. Before they come in, they need to have it, because it's going to be very difficult for somebody like you, and every school doesn't have a director of instruction. How are they going to learn it while they're trying to go in class and meet all these deadlines that are set for their school year? So that becomes really important. So I took it upon myself and I called Sutherland and I said, we have the student teacher. She has 7 hours left for this particular segment and we're out. What can we do? She needs to do online learning, because that's where we're good and that's where the whole world is going. And that gentleman said, Miss, I'm going to send you some letters and you're going to be able to send them to your principal and to your department to see if they would actually allow her to continue so that she can finish.
It only makes sense.
It only makes sense, you know.
But it speaks to what we need to do as it pertains to union advocacy and the things that are outlined in our collective bargaining agreement. And we'll talk about that later on in the show. You've been tuned in to Teacher Talk Special Edition. This is Founders Week. We'll be right back.
Wish there was more local content on TV? Do you want to see quality local content on TV? Watch Channel 82. and see another side of Bermuda. We broadcast a variety of local programs, everything from local sports to beauty. Support Channel 82. Let us know you're watching. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Channel 82 Bermuda, where Bermuda shines through.
Teacher Talk.
I just want to say that we need to start supporting our public school teachers.
It's time for Teacher Talk.
Education is the most powerful weapon to change the world.
It's time for Teacher Talk.
Welcome back to this special edition of Teacher Talk. We have been having some fruitful conversation about the impact of COVID amongst educators and our school buildings. And there were lots of challenges, ladies.
Yep.
But there were also some really bright spots. And as Madam President said, our teachers showed up. They showed up and they showed out. And I always talk about this fabulous group of primary one teachers that I worked with over the COVID period. These young ladies, I mentored and have coached them literally over the past 10 to 12 years. And they reached out to me on their own. They got together and said, listen, let's divide and conquer. We have a lot on our plates. And they reached out to me. They asked me to be a part. And we have to understand when we talk about teachers and collaboration and sharing, a lot of our schools are one stream. So you don't always have that co-teacher to go to bounce ideas off of it. And I just really want to highlight them because parents were appreciative of the model that they chose to use. They divided up the subjects. Remember, in primary school, they're generalists. And by generalists, I mean they have to think about math and the language and the science and the social studies. And they decided to divide and conquer. Someone took the language, someone took the math. I was in on their conversations. I gave feedback. We reviewed videos together. They recorded the lessons. They shared activities. Guess what? We started the school year. We ended up doing in-person teaching, but I see the emails go in. I see the WhatsApp messages where they're still sharing information. So that collaboration and everybody showing up to have each other's back, because one of those teachers was actually pregnant. She gave birth during this first term of the school year. And so it just really eased everyone up, but also provided multiple minds to come together, you know, and it was really awesome to see that sort of thing amongst our teachers in the midst of all of the challenges.
Yeah, it really speaks to what teachers can do when they're given the liberty to be able to be creative and execute without having to function in this prescribed manner, because sometimes these come down the pipeline and it's everyone has to do this way, but I can see that as being one of those greater gains for us, where people were able to be creative and have the flexibility to make things work, because that becomes a challenge too. And I think that we have to be careful too, because I know some things started happening like that, where certain schools created their own plans of what's going to work for our community, right? Because as we already talked about, what works for you over here is not necessarily going to work for you over here. So I think that's something that we always have to put out there as a reminder, especially when we don't have all of those things in place. Resources, this, that, and the next for us to do what it is that you want us to do. Allow us to figure out how this can work for us. And
our culture. And luckily, they have the leadership that allowed that flexibility, you know, so they were able to fly and they're soaring.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Another big thing, though, when we talk about positives, if we can find them in, you know, the time of COVID, is as government workers, it was a great thing to be a government worker, because one thing for us, when we talked about the negotiations with the austerity measures, you know, we went into negotiations with the trade union Congress.
Right.
Every single one of our members kept their job, so everyone remained gainfully employed. And we know that that's been a global challenge, as it has been nationally, where, you know, a lot of businesses could not sustain themselves during this time. So although we did have to give up and we had to sacrifice, and looking at the bigger picture is what we had to let everyone know, as long as everyone remained gainfully employed. So it definitely was a great thing, or is a great thing, to be a government worker during this time at the end of the day. So
I was going to ask, how did like COVID impact on the union and relationships with the union and the Department of Education?
Another positive, you know,
Everybody had to show up.
Post me standing on my soapbox with my ladder, even as president of the union, I had to kind of just sit back because the challenges that everyone was going through, we don't necessarily have to advocate on the forefront or on the front line. It's definitely a time where collaboration is needed. And that's actually one of our mandates in our CBA. As a union, we have agreed to foster and promote positive and good relations with the government and with the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education. So we had to take a step back and say, how can we work together to get through this calamitous time? And so it's been a great thing thus far in that during the summer, we were able to come together, Department of Education, Ministry of Education, I want to say it was the minister, the permanent secretary, and the commissioner, and the AD who were in these meetings. And we were meeting weekly in the lead up. Once we aired out everything, because that's important to you, you have to separate your differences at the end of the day, but come together for the common good of making education work for our teachers and our students. And so we started working together. We were meeting and there was honest collaboration to be able to sit in a meeting with the Department and the Ministry of Education, put suggestions forth as a union and them be received and then you see them being executed. It was a wonderful thing and a wonderful place that it put us in as a union. On the other side of that though, the members, when they don't hear us on the front line, they feel as though the union may not be working or where's the union? And the union is there and the union is working. You, at the end of the day, are the union, and we always drive that in, that the members are the union, so we advocate for what it is that you want. And so that has been a big thing for us.
I think I just want to chime in there with the whole collaboration. One thing that came out of that was really good was the EEMC.
Most definitely.
That to me was like one of the most powerful committees that you can actually have formed, and I'm just appreciative of the fact that somewhere I feel like us on the front lines, we're the ones that are the professionals. We're the ones that take the PD for our subjects. We're the ones that are in the building. We know what's happening. So I see this shift where somebody's beginning to think on those lines. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm hoping that there's an understanding that the teachers in the building, they're really the ones that are the professionals that know what's going on, and everything outside of us needs to come in and say, okay, so what do you need and what's not happening? Okay, so there's this school saying they need this. Now what can we do to make this happen?
Indeed.
But that emergency, it's EEMC.
The Education Emergency Measures Committee.
Right. That was one of the most powerful things that came out, if you ask me.
And you know what's funny? And I have to say it because as a union, when COVID-19 was first impacting us in March before we shut down, and I remember having this conversation with Dr. Charles, and we were saying, listen, they need to bring everybody together, whether it's IT, the other unions, BIU, BPSU, because our custodial staff, everybody needs to be involved, and they need to put together this committee, and we didn't have a name at that time, but we did reach out to the department and said, hey, bring all of the movers and shakers, all of these stakeholders in education together so that we can collectively get this job done or do what needs to be done. It didn't happen then, but it just speaks to how, being persistent and time, it becomes valuable in the end. So that was actually formed in December, and it's progressive. And I think that a committee of such can actually be something that's not just beneficial during COVID, but just period as we look at education moving forward. And it really is a great thing to come together, make decisions for the betterment of the system. That affects everyone, because our lands as a union isn't the same lands as the BIU, the BPSU, or the Department of Education, and we also have Department of Health personnel there as well. So, it's definitely been great. Not to say that everything is perfect and, it's a candy coat, because from, the union standpoint in the office, we're definitely still handling several individual grievances and members who have individual concerns. That's still stuff that we're advocating. And, we still, have to bring out Dr. Charles and tell him to bring the voice out and, it's time to make off in this meeting or what have you. But, it's relevant. We can still say what it is that we have to say. This is our bottom line. We're not moving back or pushing back on this, but still we leave this meeting with an understanding to come back and to still do the business of education. So definitely as a union, we should be very proud for how we've been representing. And as I said before, just because we're not on the forefront, because at the end of the day, there are other challenges that other people are dealing with. And so our advocacy as a union had to change a bit, during this time that we're going through this pandemic.
Okay.
But, yep,
Thank you very much. You are listening to Teacher Talk Founders Day. We'll be right back after this message.
The Bermuda Union of Teachers presents the new Teacher Talk on Magic 102.7. First Thursdays, President Mishanti Bailey keeps us up to date with union biz. Second Thursdays, Sister Laurel Burns gives teacher kudos in Teacher Spotlight. Third Thursdays, Teacher Reps Patricia Nisbet and Gina Davis host Take It Back Thursday, honoring our retired teachers. And fourth Thursdays, Noir Youth Theater Company highlights youth in the arts with company director Patricia Nisbet. Tune in every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on Magic 102.7 to hear what's new on Teacher Talk.
Teacher Talk.
I just want to say that we need to start supporting our public school teachers.
It's time for Teacher Talk.
Education is the most powerful weapon to change the world.
It's time for Teacher Talk.
Well, welcome back to the special edition of Teacher Talk. Brothers and sisters, we have had an interesting year in the world when it comes to race relations. And at this time, we're going to talk about two trailblazers for the union that we want to give honor to. I'm going to talk about Dr. Eva Hudson. Dr. Eva Hudson was an activist. She was a writer, having written 4 books. She has numerous degrees from several universities, ending with a doctorate degree from Columbia University. I want to talk about what she said about being a voice for the oppressed, because as you know, we've had the Black Lives Matter movement, and we've also had, just last week, the insurrection imposed by President Donald Trump. Dr. Eva Hudson is very important to us, and she has said, and this is a quote, each generation has to fight for its own freedom. Freedom is not free. And one of her sentiments about history astounded me, because I didn't feel this way. She says, I don't know that history teaches us anything. Knowledge is always useful, and it's useful to look at our history, but whether it makes any difference to us after we've looked at it, she says, I don't think that it does. And that's very interesting, because when we look at our history of the world in terms of us being people that are of African descent, we have always been under the shoe of someone. And suddenly, with COVID coming, this whole can of worms has opened up, where we actually took to the streets as African people to talk about this oppression. And it is evident that in the world, this oppression really does exist. Even here in Bermuda, I have to say that for Dr. Hudson, for me, I felt very sad when it was thought that she was crazy. When you look at the newspaper reports from the Royal Gazette that said, oh, here she goes again, always on this rant about racism. And the one thing that she recognized that I appreciated her for was that she knew that this was a majority Black country, and so we had to have our voices placed out there. She joined with CURB, Ms. Lynn Winfield of CURB. That was a very important step, because she had this move on for reconciliation amongst the racists. But she wants, amongst the racists, sorry, not the racist, racists. She wanted us to come together as a people, because in Bermuda, we have this condition where we all really do need to work together and live together. And it was from her heart that she felt this way. As an educator, I respect the fact that she taught at Berkeley Institute, which was our, next to Howard Academy, our predominant Black institution for us. And we must not be ashamed or afraid to talk about this in our country, this situation in our country. You know, I felt very sad that for a person that had all of these degrees, she had all of these experiences, she taught at Berkeley, she has this voice for those that are oppressed, that she never made it in the upper echelons of society in terms of employment. She was always marginalized. And that to me was very sad. But I am sitting here today very proud to say that she was the first president after the desegregation of the amalgamated Bermuda Union of Teachers.
Yes.
So we should be proud of that. And
Absolutely.
I sit here today to say that as much as she's left us, her legacy has now become ultimately important, particularly with the department saying that African Bermudian studies needs to be included in our curriculum. So I'm very proud to have known her. I honor her, I cherish her, and I hope you all get an opportunity to read something that she's written, one of her 4 books.
She was well ahead of her time, though.
Well ahead.
You know, like when you think of where people are starting to think about where they want to go as far as their blackness or their relationship to Africa.
But you see how you say
the
that?
African times.
You see how you
She
say
was
that?
ahead of that, yes.
80 years.
Yeah.
Her struggle for the voice of black people in
Yeah.
Bermuda has gone on for 80 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here she is,
Right.
still alive and well, and
Yeah,
so we have
exactly.
to keep talking about her.
You know, and it wasn't in vain. It may have seemed in vain to people back then that did not understand the breadth of her intellect. You understand? They didn't understand the breadth of her intellect. And I'm repeating that because what she was looking for and what she was aiming for is where we're headed. That's the direction we're going to now, I feel. Or if we aren't going in that direction, we need to, I hope not at a snail's pace, but we need to.
So as we talk about honoring Dr. Eva Hudson right now, it takes me back to our centenary celebrations where we had an opportunity to interview her. And I'm so grateful that we did do that.
Yes.
So we have that piece of history.
Yes.
When we talk about her being ahead of her time and fighting for things that will benefit now. And, what she said at that point in time during that interview when the Teachers Association of Bermuda, which was back then the White Teachers Union, and the BUT, which was the Black Teachers Union, once we made that amalgamation, which was a step in the right direction. For her, it was important that there was a black president leading so that, that no one would overstep and that we had some form of control. And so for her, she stepped up to the plate. No matter how the elections or whatever that looked like back then went, it was important for her that, we were at the forefront. And so that plays such an integral and important part of our history, as we moved, in the direction of, human rights with her as an activist. So we truly honor her legacy, and she departed, I want to say it was in May of last year. And so we remember her. And then equally important, another trailblazer for our union, Brother Earl Hart, who departed last month. And I'm so grateful that I had an opportunity to get to know Mr. Hart, work with Mr. Hart, traveled with him. And the big joke with him is that he was everywhere. I mean, if it was an event, whether it was with sports, because he was influential in the sports arena, Bermuda Track and Field Social Club, or the union, Hart was there everywhere. Nobody knew how he got there because he didn't drive, didn't have transportation.
Let me tell you what used to happen. I'll speak to that. And so I'm new to the union, and I come in and Bermuda festivals, because I attend a lot of civic events, right? So he's going, "Oh, you're going to the festival? First time. Oh, you're going to the festival? Okay, well, I'm gonna get a ride with you." I'm like,
Yup.
And you can take me home afterwards.
This is it.
Drop him at his house. So what are you doing tomorrow? Are you going to the union tomorrow? He just kept asking. He shows up. Okay, so today I have to go so and so. Could you take me? So I became the driver for a quick minute.
This is it.
And my heart broke because I don't know if you remember. I'm not sure if it was I'm not sure what meeting it was, but I had asked that anybody checked in on him because we just had not heard from him in so long. And so when I got the news, I was like, wow.
And his name we kept alive, and it's a good thing because we always talk about giving people their roses while they're living. And as a union, when you did bring it up during that executive meeting, I'm glad that we actually sent that token of I'm thinking of you, or we're thinking of you, Brother Hart, and I know that was truly appreciated. But Hart, he was able to get around, and he was always active. So he was an executive member of our union for some time. He then became a trustee. He was one of our returning officers as he hosted the elections for many, many years. Not just in Bermuda, he was also an integral player in the Caribbean Union of Teachers. And they are our mother union as we negotiate and we work with our Caribbean affiliates. So Brother Hart was well known down there because even when we traveled, Hart knew how to get around. We would get at the airport and Hart's going. He's not traveling with us. He's already arranged a friend of somebody to come and pick him up, take him around. And I was like,
everywhere.
Everybody and everyone loved him. And when he did pass, the amount of tributes that poured in from the CUT was amazing.
Wow.
And, his work and his efforts were well noted then because he was actually honored at one of the biennial conference. They gave him an award of excellence for his contribution and dedication to unionism and education. So another moment where he got to enjoy his roses while he was here. And at that time, he had to have a bio written for himself. And what really touched me from that point is that one of his most memorable moments that he will cherish forever is the fact that we named our executive boardroom after him in our office. And so our executive boardroom is named the Earl E.A. Hart JP Executive Boardroom, and he was very proud of that. So if you want to come take a look in our office, it's his name, his picture is there, and we truly appreciate him and the legacy that he had, not just in Bermuda for union relations, but also internationally. He was definitely a representative for the nation. And so we definitely remember him and also Dr. Eva Hudson as trailblazers for our union. And may they definitely rest in peace. And hopefully those of us who are here, we can do them proud as we continue to do the work of the union. For sure.
And I think at this time, I'd like to, give voice to two of our persons that died in service. Robert Omar Wilson and Mr. Jones.
Yeah, it's definitely. That's right.
Let us not forget this as well, because that's got to be a challenge for schools and students when people that they work with suddenly, pass. In
service. It surely takes a hill, most definitely.
All right. You are watching a special edition of Teacher Talk. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Bermuda Union of Teachers presents the new Teacher Talk on Magic 102.7. First Thursdays, President Mashanti Bailey keeps us up to date with union biz. Second Thursdays, Sister Laurel Burns gives teacher kudos in Teacher Spotlight. Third Thursdays, Teacher Reps Patricia Nisbet and Gina Davis host Take It Back Thursday, honoring our retired teachers. And fourth Thursdays, Noir Youth Theater Company highlights youth in the arts with company director Patricia Nisbet. Tune in every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on Magic 102.7 to hear what's new on Teacher Talk.
Teacher Talk.
I just want to say that we need to start supporting our public school teachers.
It's time for Teacher Talk.
Education is the most powerful weapon to change the world.
It's time for Teacher Talk.
Welcome back to Teacher Talk, special edition, a year in review. Laurel, give me a recap for today.
Listen, it has been quite a union year that we've had, and a union year for us is February 1st to February 1st. And we started out last February with some unfortunate teacher action, found ourselves into COVID, which has translated into some interesting transitions in our industrial relations with the Department of Education. I'm happy to say that has evolved into something that has been collaborative, mostly positive, but challenging, and we push back when we absolutely have to. And, we've also found ourselves losing some trailblazers, and we have honored our Dr. Eva Hudson and Brother Earl Gabby Hart. And yes, we have lost a couple of members within service. However, there have been some amazing things that have also continued to happen throughout this union year. And we found opportunities in all of this to connect. So Sister Pat, tell us about this amazing virtual conference we have this year.
Listen, Linda, listen. You know, we've been used to like going up to, we at the point where we were going up to Southampton Princess, be body and special technology. People could register online, register for everything online. You come in, you had our special cards. It was just a beautiful time. And then COVID came and took all that away. And we were like, okay, so we're not going to have a conference. We are going to have a conference. And then Madam President said, yes, we are having a conference. So
Make it happen.
Make it happen. The virtual conference happened, and I can tell you that I have not heard anyone say anything that's not positive, except that there was one segment that everybody couldn't get into. This was not our issue. We wouldn't lay blame anywhere. But anyway, it wasn't our issue. At that conference, there was a song. You did a good job.
Oh, yes.
And oh my goodness, Brother John Duncan put together this amazing trio of singers.
Brother John Woolridge.
Brother John Woolridge,
yes,
put together this amazing trio
that included Brother Duncan.
Johnson, right? Brother Duncan. Okay, I'm getting all caught up in my words.
Jones.
But anyway, can you just tell me? And Sophia, I don't know Sophia's last name.
Sophia Iris, Sister Iris,
okay.
and Sister Baston.
And Sister
Shakobi
Baston. Sister Shakobi. Anyway, that song went platinum on the BUT music list. I just want to say it was
very
beautiful.
much.
It was beautifully done.
All right.
Video list.
I didn't realize we had one.
Stop. Okay. And then the other thing that was just absolutely amazing was the Bermuda Union of Teachers Rep Conference. Let me just say, I have never had so much fun at a conference that was also very educational. And I just felt like the reps left their understanding that they had to go back to their schools and say, listen, you have to stop saying the union, because we are the union. It built some solidarity.
Definitely.
And we have to just kind of keep building on that so that people don't go say the union.
This is it.
We.
Yep, and we always have to say that, we can do what we think needs to happen, but at the end of the day, we represent the membership. We are the voice of what it is that you want. And so that REPS conference was truly focused on union representation, and empowering our reps, because at the office, we only know what's happening via our reps and the concerns that they bring forward.
And that was good for me, because that was the first time as a new rep, period, that I had ever even been to the conference, the rep conference. And it was an awesome learning experience for me. I think I learned a lot. I keep my little book beside me. I read it. But what I do now is every week I flip through, I find some information, I turn it into a question, and I send it out to the teachers at Cedar Bridge Academy, and I asked, the first person come with the right answer and all that sort of stuff. And now I just have to come to the union to get prizes.
Perfect. And that's the whole purpose, enhancing representation. And so we have to empower our reps, so that it's part of the whole succession plan as well. We have to train up our reps so that they become empowered to then be on the executive and sit.
Well, I'm too old for the executive part. By the time I get, by the time I learn all that information, I'm retiring. I'm gonna be a trustee.
Correct. But under Madam President's leadership, as we talk about reform and really educating our members and bringing more people into the understanding of the workings of the union, we also have our under 35 committee. Now, I know that is a touchy subject for some people, so let me give a bit of clarity. As we have our mother union, the CUT, we also have EI, which is Education International. That is the international arm of unionism around the world, around the globe. I know, Madam President, you and Sister Heiliger got to go to Morocco to attend that conference, and it was the women's conference, I believe, and it was an empowering experience. However, one of the programs within EI is to encourage young people to get involved with their unions. And to that end, they ask us to, put in an under 35 committee to start raising the younger members into the understandings of unionism. That committee for the Bermuda Union of Teachers is alive and well. And they've gotten together a few times over the year for some social, interactions so that they can get to know each other. They're all across the island, but also to start really learning the inner workings of the union so that they soon, some of them are very new to the system can start becoming union reps. As you say, Jeannie, again, too old. And the union reps. As I said, you've been to EI for the Women's Conference. The CUT has the status of Women's Committee, and we have our own arm here. So in November, we had the Women's Conference at Grotto Bay, which was sponsored by the CUT. And that was an amazing experience. Again, as teachers, we always want to know more information. So we had Sister Keisha Allen, who is your comrade over at the Barclay Institute, right, Sister Gina?
Right, yes.
Who came and did some professional development with us, things we can take back to our classroom. But we balanced that with some teacher wellness, and they did some chair yoga in the afternoon. They had an essential oil seminar in between to really think about ways that they can balance themselves. And some of our teachers took advantage of the special at Grotto Bay and stayed over and really got a chance to rejuvenate. So we have had multiple opportunities across the year to connect as a union.
Most definitely, because the wellness piece is important as well. So yes, we are in the business of education, but we also have to make sure that physically, mentally, emotionally, we are taking care of ourselves, you know, and because outside of the job, we also have our families, you know,
right.
Many times we put our families first as well. And so, it has been a great year, you know, and even outside of the events that we had, and actually just to touch on the EI element, because we had to do things a bit differently because of COVID.
Remember the drive-through?
The drive-through and your party. Yup. Still had the DJ, happy food. People drove through, socially distanced, so that was awesome. Good food always. Shout out to Wilkes Catering, who always manages to feed us all. And then we also had to rethink how we did World Teachers Day. Now, Education International, they're the ones who govern the universal World Teachers Day celebration. So they actually hosted a 24-hour virtual conference, and proud to say for our union, we actually submitted, and our feature was on an international platform across the globe as we celebrated the works of teachers. I want to say the theme was reimagining the future during this time of crisis. And I may have gotten it all wrong, but you get the gist, you know. But we've had to do things a bit differently. So the virtual conference, we wasn't able to have an end of year party, unfortunately, because that's when our numbers kind of peaked. So I know members, you were upset that nothing happened during that time, but there was something that was in the works and we had to pull back, but they're coming back. The social committee's always got something up their sleeves to be able to ensure that as a union, we're still holding down the premise that membership has its benefits, because ultimately, the retirees dinner also is something that we still did. We have many members who are union members, and they don't necessarily come to the union for advocacy or to support them during a dispute. But we hosted our retirees dinner, and I want to say we had over 20 retirees, and
easily.
Collectively, I want to say it was over 400 years of service that we celebrated that evening.
And 20 people,
it was an awesome thing that we were still able to do. And a special shout out again, we honored some trailblazers in the previous segment, but to Brother Anthony Wolf and to Sister Angel Heiliger, who have been union stalwarts for collectively over 50 years.
I don't remember them. I don't remember them not being there.
Indeed, we got to honor them as they entered glory land of retirement as well. But on the union forefront, when we talk about advocacy, so some of those things when it pertains to negotiations, our paraeducators, JD, we signed off in that in March.
After 20 years of a fight.
Could you imagine, right? So the JD was signed off, and also with that, the salary uplift, and stage one of the salary uplift took place in September. And this is new news because it hasn't been broadcasted publicly yet, but Phase 2 of the salary uplift is due to take place in September 2021. So when the news drops for that for our paraeducators, I know they'll be pleased about that.
Wow.
And also our members who have been on 1-year contracts, some of them upwards of 10 years, they've now been being issued their
full contract
letters of appointment. Because people don't understand really what that means when you're on a 1-year contract. If you only have a commitment from September to June, if you go to the bank and you only got to loan for a car or a house, they're going to deny you because there's no security in employment. So that has been a huge impact for many of our members. Some of them have been on 1-year contracts for 10 years. So we're grateful that those letters have been been distributed as well. So although we've been in this era of COVID, the union advocacy piece has still been in place, handling individual grievances and the like. That's still been happening, but just readjusting the membership has its benefits and how we do other things has been pivotal during this time.
Yes.
Right. So what are some of the things you think we'll be fighting for next?
Right, because at the end of the day, advocacy continues.
Advocacy and the work continues.
So Gina, I know on your heart, you want to make sure that our salaries are pensionable.
Right. I think
no matter
that
what your
scale
post
posts.
is. Yep,
Scale posts should be. I mean, I don't know how people think about that, but I do feel as if scale post positions should be pensionable, because basically what them not being pensionable means is that after your 3 years, when you reapply, and if you do not get it, you technically you get demoted.
Financially demoted.
Financially demoted, as well as positionally, really.
Oh, yeah,
when you think about it. So,
but that doesn't happen. I'm not aware of that happening in any other job.
I don't think
if you become the director, you have that salary until you retire.
Yeah.
And technically, if you look at the historical context of scale posts, because remember, and I can't remember how many years ago it was, but deputy principals used to be a scale post, and that argument was presented back then to say, listen, I could be a deputy principal for 10 years, but when I retire, that money isn't going to be permanent. It's not pensionable, and so we did win that fight to make deputy principals posts permanent and pensionable. So that is something we should look at for those who are on scale post, scale 3 and 4.
Because for me, I'd like what in fact is the rationale for it,
and is there one?
Yeah, what's the rationale?
Negotiations at the end of the day, that's something that we're looking to start, because one concept is because we did the recent austerity measures, there isn't room to have negotiations because we said no negotiating for the year. However, in our collective bargaining agreement, there are some other things that we can negotiate for, because one thing that's a big topic of discussion is planning and preparation time. Can I get a witness at home? How many of us can vouch for or the need to have additional planning and preparation?
Right.
We talked about that earlier in the show.
Yes.
The demands have increased, but the time that has been allotted for us to be able to prepare for that hasn't changed.
Outside of it never being enough time, I think one of the other issues is that the time that you do have, they're now being pegged for meetings. Yeah. So you're kind of telling me what I have to do for, and then, once, okay, and then it's 2, and then it's like, well, hold on. When do I get a planning and prep time that's for me so that I can get myself together, because you keep pegging it onto stuff that you want me to do?
Well, just said on a minute, and I'm going to say this. Whatever planning and preparation time you have, depending on what level you are at, that is sacred time. So no one should be booking any meetings during your sacred planning and preparation time. And I'm going to say it again. And if you have any issues with that, contact your union rep, contact the union office. That is sacred time. No one can dictate to you what you do during your, the minutes that you have at primary level, your 6 preps at middle, and the 1/5 of the schedule, I believe it is, at the high school. That is your time. And you can deny a meeting. At the end of the day, the CBA, and I don't have a copy here, that's the union Bible. Whatever is listed in that book supersedes everything. And all you need to do is, and I know, Sister Pat, in the rep seminar, you did that little skit to say, hey, you see this right here? It says I have X, Y, Z, and that ultimately holds, that's the letter of the law, what's in that CBA. So don't feel bullied into giving up what has been
given to you.
Given to you, So it's a lot of work to do on the advocacy standpoint, from a union point of view, that we need to do. And ultimately, the big picture is, because we don't know how long COVID is going to be a factor, or how long it's going to affect us. How does that affect the collective bargaining agreement, and how do we have to revisit and look at things that's in our CBA?
And that's important, because right now we have a lot of blurred lines. A lot of blurred lines.
On top of that, you ladies know that I've been involved with one aspect of the education reform. And so when we think of advocacy, it's what are we fighting for? But now, what are we keeping our eye on? So now we're doing 2 things. We're fighting for things that we know aren't right now, but now we have to have this big eye on reform. What does that look like, and what does that mean for us? keeping in mind our motto, education for responsibility. But when we think about this education reform movement, and for those who are not clear, you have one aspect of it called consultation that they're working on currently. That consultation at this point is around the parish primary schools. We're not going to get into a big debate about that right now, but there's a huge consultation document that addresses the conversation they want to have around that. Where some decisions, some ultimate decisions will have to be made. And then we know that they're going to be working on an education authority and what that could look like for us. And then the part that I'm working directly on, which is Learning First, the actual program that determines what schooling learning, teaching and learning looks like, from the environment to the pedagogy to the curriculum. And I could probably go on and on. But we have a lot of work to do as a union in terms of keeping an eye on all of these things and ensuring that members on our rights, they fit, and what adjustments may need to be made, and what are we looking for in terms of ensuring that we have really best practices for us as teachers, and ensuring that it sets us up to be educators for responsibility. So we're in an interesting time with education reform, but I know so far with this improved collaboration between the department and the ministry, they've been doing a pretty good job at keeping us informed of their steps, and we're keeping an eye on things and ensuring that we know what's going on.
And the thing is, from that, the advice, or I should say the guidance that we hear from a union standpoint, because a lot of members have questions, and we can talk about the many consultants that we've had come down, and a lot of the plans that have been falling that's not implemented. And so we can only hope that the work that's being done, because at the end of the day, the work comes with money that's being invested, that there's something that comes out of it that's going to be a benefit for all of us. So we just say to our members, be informed. The information that's out there, make sure you read up on it. If there's something that's uncomfortable, you have questions about, ask the questions.
That's right.
What is it that we have a concern about? And the consultation piece is important, because it's not just stamp go, this is what it is. If it's not something that's not going to work for us, then let's make sure that we have that argument put in place to say why this can't work, or what are the other suggestions. Because I'm all about, you can say that it's not going to work, but what is it that we want at the end of the day?
Make sure your voice is heard.
Make sure your voice is definitely heard.
And
so go ahead.
I was just going to say, luckily for the aspect that I'm working on, Learning First, we have a huge number of members who are working on those various teams. So honestly, as educators, you don't have to go far to ask questions. You actually have colleagues. You can easily find a colleague who's working on that aspect. For the other aspects, as Sister President said, read up on it, ask questions first, find out more information, and ensure that you let us know what voice you have in terms of the changes that are about to come down the line over the next few years.
Yes. Indeed. And so it's going to be important, the collaboration piece,
Yes.
Us as a union via our reps, the executive committee, as we see where education is going to be in the next couple of years. And we have an important voice in that, those decisions that are going to be made.
900 strong.
So this has been an awesome episode of
is.
Teacher Talk as we celebrate Founders Week, 102 years of union representation. We should be truly proud as Bermuda's oldest, the first trade union in Bermuda. We hope everyone has had an awesome Founders Week, and Founders Week isn't over yet, so there are some things that are due to happen for the remainder of this week, but this has been our special edition of Teacher Talk. And of course, if you haven't been tuning in, we are airing live on Magic 102.7 each and every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. I host the first Thursday of the month with Union Biz. Sister Laurel Burns comes to you the second Thursday of every month with Teacher Spotlight, and Sister Pat and Sister Gina, they are on the third Thursday with Take It Back Thursday. And of course, on the fourth Thursday, we have our young people from Noir Theater Company who host and focus on youth in the arts under the tutelage of Sister Pat Nesbitt. So this has been a wonderful live session of Teacher Talk as we celebrate. But of course, we will be back next week on air, Magic 102.7. This is your BUT, the Bermuda Union of Teachers, and we are here for each and every one of you. Give us a call. Call us at the office. Come by and visit us. It is an open door policy. If there's a concern or an idea that you have as we improve on our advocacy, as this year or this biennial, we have been focusing on union reform and representation as we improve on how we represent you and also reform our union to sustain us for the next 100 years. It has been a wonderful, wonderful evening with each and every one of you. And we will see you next week on Teacher Talk, Magic 102.7. Thank you for joining us.
It took 14 days to build your business plan, 6 months to build the courage to leave your day job, 3 weeks to find the perfect location. It took 10 days to outfit your space just right. And 1 day before your first client walked in the door. All totaled, it took you a full year to get your business operational. And this is just the beginning. To the entrepreneurs, the risk takers, the people that shape our economic community, we salute you and are here for you every step of the way. BEDC, providing knowledgeable, progressive, professional